teachers don't often get a chance to talk to other teachers. A networked cohort is a structure for teams. And when we say teams, we mean multiple certified educators who share kids to come together. And we create space where those educators can share ideas, they can brainstorm, they can explore these concepts outside of the day-to-day demands of school. The power of the networked cohort is in bringing together practicing educators who have enormous knowledge and expertise to be able to learn and share with each other on the team and also with other teams. So as these teams are trying out deeper and personalized learning pedagogy, as they're figuring out ways to distribute their expertise as adults with their learners, they bring those learnings back to the cohort to share that with other teams. So what we've seen with schools that are building next education workforce models is that the school day is really, really busy. Carving out space for teams to be able to work together to think about how to build next education workforce models has to be, there has to be structured time and space to protect that work. We heard again and again from educators that they wanted to be able to talk to each other. So as we were working with schools, we would often hear, I saw Spark School at Kyrene de las Manitas on your website. We would love to visit. And so we do that. We do help schools to connect and to make individual visits. But during this school year, because of pandemic restrictions, people have not been able to visit each other. Additionally, it turns out that the scheduling involved in getting these people together with busy school days and conferences and meetings and all the things is really hard to do. So we thought, well, what if we can have a pre-scheduled time and we can tell you from now until May, here's the time once a month that you're going to get together with other educators to talk about and share these big ideas. So when we talk about teams in the next education workforce, we're talking about teams of educators who share students over at least part of the day. Sometimes we talk about a shared roster as a way to think about that. And we mean certified educators who are going to continue to work together over time. There are teams that meet in grade level PLCs Wednesdays after school. And we don't mean to say that's important work. We don't mean to say that that's not a team, but a next education workforce team looks different. The teams vary depending on the context. So Brinton Elementary in Mesa has a third grade team. They have 3 certified teachers with varying levels of experience in different areas of expertise. Also on their team, they have 3 teacher candidates from MLFTC who joined them for the year. Those 6 educators together come around all of the third grade students, supporting them in flexible and fluid ways and best leveraging the educator's strengths to support learners. Working together as a team that deepens and personalizes learning experiences with a shared group of learners is really different than how most teachers have taught in the past. So I have over 20 years of classroom experience, and whether it was high school or elementary or at the community college, most of that time I was one teacher in the classroom with my learners. And so when we start to think about a team coming around a group of learners, there's a challenge in figuring out how to be vulnerable, right? The needing to be able to say, I don't know. There's a power in learning to work collaboratively and share things, and that can be hard, right? So we see challenges sometimes around like finding the balance of how much do we have team members own individual pieces of the work versus planning everything together. The instructional shifts that we're talking about are challenging. In the last 10 to 15 years, we as a country have come to this place where the standardized test reigns supreme and there's scripted curriculum, and the intentions behind all of those changes were hoping to support learners. What we've seen is that some educators at this point are very comfortable with the scripted curriculum, but may not know how to make these shifts to deeper and personalized learning, inquiry-based approaches, giving voice and choice to learners. The power of the team is that we have seen time and again with our partners that when educators are working together, they're able to make more shifts more quickly in this really resilient and beautiful way. It has been a challenging year for educators across the country, across the world. It has been a challenging year. So we have school partners who last year very intentionally brought their communities on board, got community buy-in and input, got teacher buy-in and input around building pilots for next education workforce models. And then COVID hit in March, and we had a little bit of like, we hope it's not going to be around too long. We know now, a year later, that we're still dealing with it. And so these teams who are really putting in a lot of time thinking about how to allow students to move more fluidly through the space, how to empower learners to be able to articulate what they need and then go ask an educator for it. All of a sudden, we're in the situation of needing to have learners in cohorts, have learners stay in the same seats, not being allowed to move fluidly. It was challenging. It continues to be challenging. Despite all of that, our partners have continued to do the work. And we have seen some really beautiful and maybe unexpected benefits of having these teams surround learners. So one of the things we've seen in Arizona is that in an effort to provide flexibility for families, as we should, our school districts have asked families at different points, let's say once a quarter, maybe every 9 weeks, do you want your child to be in person or do you want your child to be virtual or learning remotely? And again, we want our families to be able to have that input based on their family circumstances, based on pre-existing health conditions. These are all really important things for every family. And so in Arizona, in an effort to provide that flexibility for families, sometimes learners have ended up actually switching teachers multiple times over the course of the year. We know how important it is to have consistency for our learners with the adults who are supporting them. What we've seen with these teams who have next education workforce models is that the team can distribute themselves in a way that they can still support all of those kiddos. So at Spark, those 115 kids, they've stayed either remotely or in person or switching back and forth between the two for the whole year. The other benefit of having that multi-age environment at Spark is that as we finished last year, where there was really no in-person learning happening, and students came back in August, that team actually already knew 2/3 of their learners and how to support them. So what we've seen over the course of the year is that the cohort creates an onboarding opportunity for educators to try out these big ideas. And it empowers them to make sense of what this looks like and develop it themselves. Teachers in the US, we have a long history of saying to teachers, here's what you're going to do now. Here's what you're going to do now. And so the cohort, the power of it is that the school leader says, here's what we're going to do. Here are the big ideas. There's a box that they're building in. And then that school leader and the cohort empower the teachers to figure out exactly what that looks like. We've seen that the schools that have had maybe just one team participating in a cohort to start with have asked for additional space. And so as we've added more cohorts, we've seen this rapid increase in the number of schools that are building whole school next education workforce models, and that the cohort is a way to help to onboard and empower those educators to be able to take on that challenging work. Every time we finish a cohort session, I feel so good about the possibility of systems level change in Arizona schools and across the US. And I'm encouraged, not only because our educators are passionate and smart and knowledgeable, though all those things are true. I'm encouraged because I hear educators who are willing to try something different, who will say, you know, this one teacher, one classroom, age graded, scripted curriculum way of doing things is not the best for our learners, and we're willing to try something different. I think the most encouraging thing for me is to hear a teen who says, oh, I think we're going to try this thing, and they're a little nervous. And then they come back and they are just lit up and excited to share what they tried and what they learned. And we know from school leaders and from teachers that they're sharing that learning and empowerment not only within the cohort, which is fantastic, but they're also sharing it back at their schools. And that's why we're seeing this work evolve so quickly.